Hello and welcome to Glitch Point. Yeah, it's another week that was kind of slow, but at least we had 4th of July, and I'm sure that a lot of people played games over the 4th of July weekend. There were a lot of games to play, and while we wait for the next big drops. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we're just going to talk about the games. We're both caught up on The Last of Us 2. So I'm still playing it, but I think I have enough of a reference to be able to discuss it. So we can discuss that and then other games of the such. I think this game is going to be game of the year. For me, it just feels so polished. I know, but it's like, the funny thing is I'm interesting that you even made that little grunt because you're like really waiting for another Splinter Cell style game and stealth, and like this game just I really loved the stealth, and like especially when they kept adding more elements, and we're gonna spoil the shit out of this up to the point where I am.
Yeah, which is interesting that you
Ow.
bring up the stealth part, but continue.
Yeah, because I don't know I mean, like I'm right now to the point where they enter the dogs in, so it's probably like I don't know, was that halfway? If I made it halfway,
Ooh, I would say you're maybe a fourth.
damn.
I was gonna say
Okay.
there's a lot. Interesting. Continue though.
No, yeah. So like up to that point, and you can kind of spoil. Just don't spoil the story. It's fine.
Yeah.
Uh, Up to that point, is it? I felt like because you start off like from where I am, you start off with the zombies, and they're really easy.
Yeah.
Because they don't like the clickers, or you don't even have to. You just crouch up to them and then stab them with Ellie, and then but then once they start to do the human stuff, and then they add the dogs in, and then it's like you're really like running around like trying to. I love like that you can set your proximity mines, and then the dog will run into them, and like I don't know. There's just um, a lot going on where it's like I really have to think about what I'm doing. The save thing is still happening, where it doesn't
Yeah.
save every
I.
kill, but it's definitely saves a lot.
Oh yeah. I never got stuck in the game for the difficulty that I was on, and yeah, there was so many times where I died and I'm like fuck, and then I was like, oh well, okay, I'll just
Yeah,
continue on. There were even
but
times where it saved so frequently that I'm like, you saved past my mistake. So I had to like restart a checkpoint because I'm like, no, by the time I get to that save point that you saved, I'm already fucked. Like there's no way to redeem myself. So it was
yeah,
interesting.
I actually read something about that before I played it. So they said just make sure you save before at the beginning of every encounter on a hard
Yeah.
save. And so I do that. I hard save every encounter and just in case.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Um
it's good, I guess. It's like whatever. I mean, it's just like you could save yourself if you really wanted to.
Yeah, and I going back to what you said about the stealth, that was one of my favorite parts of the game was their just how much more in depth they took the combat compared to Last of Us One, because that was my main gripe with Last of Us One was it was a very generic third person shooter.
Yeah,
But they just went all out, and it was I loved playing stealthily for both zombies and just humans, because especially being able to prone and go into the grass, go under cars. Speaking of the dogs, I ended up only killing maybe 1 to 3 dogs in the big part where they have a lot of dogs, where they kind of first introduce them,
yeah,
by just kind of using my bow to shoot the owners of the dogs, and then the dog would kind of just cry around its owner. So that was cool, and I love that you can see your scent. I thought that was one of the coolest mechanics the game had, was just
yeah,
getting a scent and then having to break it. I did thoroughly enjoy the stealth of this game.
yeah. It was really neat. I mean, like the dog. Well, the bow thing. The problem with me was I didn't have any resources.
Yeah,
I played it on the hardest setting because I don't know. I just felt like doing it.
yeah,
And it is a struggle for resources. So like I get like maybe one shot or two. So like you really have to play with everything. The mines is nice because the mines, like as the dog follows you, it's really easy. Like the dog
yeah,
follows you, and it usually kills the owner too, unless the dog's too far ahead. Um, but just like everything, like the way that they search the grids, like once that you had some sort of interaction that made your position aware, they would do a search, a grid search. And
yep,
like, a lot of times I would sit there and I'd be like, oh, they're running the same path. Like I get stuck somewhere. and I would see the same stupid path over and over again.
Yeah.
Or like the same 5. But then there was always like some random 6th or 7th path, and like some way, like I couldn't quite figure out what was going on with the pathfinding. I almost think it's because I was moving in the same way that they were following similar, like a 5-set path. And then once I started to change what I was doing, it's like almost like their path set changed. I don't know. It was like I tried to figure it out a lot of times because, there was like, especially with the zombies, like I felt like you could run the same path and they would do the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
But the humans didn't see. They seemed to like have, I think, about 5. Like, they would check either on the right side of the box, the left side of the box. They would either look left when they came around the corner or right, and it was enough to make it interesting.
Yeah, I really liked how the humans interacted kind of with you and the environment. I assumed that when you hid under a car or a shed or something that like if you went there while they saw you, of course they would look under there. But I know one thing that kind of freaked me out was that I went under a shed and I thought that I was pretty safe, and like 3 guys walked past me and I'm like, oh cool, they don't know. I could just stay here forever. And then it was one girl was just like, you know what, let's look under here, and that scared the shit out of me. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
Great what they did. But my problem, and again, I'm not going to spoil story-wise, but there's a point in the game where stealth doesn't really become the greatest of options, so that was one problem I did have, but I won't say why or how that means.
Well, I'm sure it gets overwhelming, like at the end. They have to, because like when you play, what is it, like survival or whatever? I don't know I forgot what the hardest setting was.
Yeah.
But when you play on that, it's like you don't have a lot of options a lot of times other than stabbing people. I mean, I've gotten to the point where, I have a nice arsenal of, med kits, which I never use. Or the Molotov cocktails and the proximity mines, which are like the 2 of my favorite things to use, especially on zombies. And like, I've been using the Molotov cocktails more if I can, just because you can get like brush fires and different things going on. And, it's really interesting. I just, I don't know. So like as later in the game, I would hope that they would keep the stealth, because I don't think I could survive if I had to go all out on weapons. I just wouldn't be able to have enough ammunition.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was a point in the game, and I was playing on normal difficulty, and I definitely wasn't searching every building, every drawer. But I definitely searched, but I never felt like I had enough ammo. Which I do like, and that's something I always felt like with the first game as well. I don't like the feeling that I have enough ammo, because then I don't really care that I shoot things. I shoot them, but like every shot feels like it counts, which I loved.
Yeah, they did a really good job, and I'm glad they did that also on normal, where they made that. So if you pick up stuff on normal, do you just get it? Like if you pick up, I don't know, scissors or the whatever the health, any of those, you just get it. Okay, so you get a 4th of it. So for everything you pick,
no. Yeah, I see what you're saying. No, I don't get a whole thing of scissors. I definitely only get a 4th as well.
Oh, okay. So then they because that's how I thought they might have slated the difficulty, was just by making that add less to the wheel rather than.
That was maybe that I think was just a bit frustrating at the beginning. I mean, once I learned it, it's whatever. But yeah, at the beginning, it just felt like I kept getting these materials, and I was like, why can't I craft anything? And then I started to realize the whole you get 1/4 of the wheel.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense, and I did like one thing I loved was that since that was kind of confusing and I kind of lost track of all the resources and where I was at, every time that I got a resource and now was able to craft something, it would give me a little like sound notification that you have something craftable. So that pretty much solved that issue.
Well, they use Square. You could also like use Square in your menu when you were switching weapons to craft certain things.
That was very nice.
Yeah, it's just the whole the UI UX stuff was great. I mean, it just felt really good. I loved the fact that you had stuff in your backpack, and then you had stuff like that was on your sidearms, and you could switch it out by holding Square. And just like it just really felt really good and natural. And the fact that you also got, you got different sidearms for different weapons that allowed you to hold more weapons. Yeah, it was really cool, really well done. Like, and so I'm curious to know why you might have huffed a little bit at Game of the Year.
Yeah, so I don't think that I think the controversy, and again, it's not really fair to the game at all because I think the game is fantastic and it does a great story. And I can't remember if The Last of Us 1 got Game of the Year, like the Game of the Year, not just like maybe for narrative, which I guarantee you it got. And I'm sure it's going to win Game of the Year awards, but I think, I mean, the tough thing that has kind of always been consistent is it's really hard to give an exclusive title Game of the Year. I don't know if that's ever happened. Um, and also, it is a very like decisive game when it comes to people who like it and people who don't like it. And the other thing is, it's so early in this. Well, I guess it's not. It's halfway. Damn.
Yeah, halfway through, buddy.
um, but I mean, it's going up against some pretty big games. I mean, it's another exclusive, but I think Ghost of Tsushima is gonna be absolutely incredible, and probably a
Yes.
little less controversial. And the other one, I think that's really, I think everything depends on this in terms of the game of the year is going to be Cyberpunk 2077. If that
But
somehow comes
it's
out
not
this
going to be
year.
this. It's not coming out this year.
I mean, they've delayed it a couple times, but it's yeah currently slated for November of this year. So,
Yeah,
which
you're right.
I think Cyberpunk was playing a little bit of a waiting game because again, it was supposed to come out like what 2 months ago, a month ago, and I think that was definitely too early, and they noticed that, which is why they pushed it back to I think August. But I think the other reason, and the reason they pushed it again, was they finally found out when the new consoles are going to come out, and I think they really want to be able to ship it not necessarily day one, but like maybe within a week or two of the new consoles, rather than 2 months before the new consoles. So it's coming out this year, and I just there's so much hype around that game. I just if they can nail it, which I'm pretty sure The Witcher 3 was the one who won Game of the Year.
During The Last of Us. Well, I don't know what during that year.
That went against, I believe, or it came out 1 year before Fallout 4, but then they had an expansion that was so great that it was like re-up for Game of the Year against
Yeah,
Fallout 4 in terms of RPG.
the
So
the Blood and Wine one for Blood and Wine, I think it was.
was that or Wild Hunt? I can't remember.
Those two they came out at the same time, so
Oh, then yeah.
I think it was
Um,
both.
and again, I
Um,
mean, we're still. I just looking at. I know it's a launch year for consoles, so usually there's not tons of stuff, but I just feel like there's some games that we're just not seeing that are going to come out this year. From like Ubisoft has or I guess there's Valhalla, but I don't think that's going to win Game of the Year.
so it won. Yeah, says oh maybe yeah. So list of accolades received by Last of Us. Wikipedia.
There you go.
Nice little Wikipedia page. So yeah, it looks like they won Game of the Year, or best nominee, best story. Yeah, Game of the Year
Really?
in 2013. Yeah, I mean it was a really good game.
Yeah.
I mean at the time, especially for these types of storyline games, it really had. Actually, this one I didn't think. I thought there were other games. I don't know what other. I would have to look at 2013. Let me do that. 2013
I know.
games.
That's funny that it launched in 2013. All right, that makes sense because The Last of Us came out on the PS3.
Wow.
And then went to 4, and the Last of Us 2 came
So
out right before the
listen to
5.
this game. This game, I would not have agreed. BioShock Infinite says 2013.
I know.
Grand Theft Auto 5, 2013. Is that right? Battlefield 4, that doesn't care. Devil May Cry, blah blah blah. Metal Gear, Beyond Two Souls. Yeah, so it would really be between Last of Us, Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider. The reboot was in 2013.
Wow.
So I mean, there was a lot of good competition. I think this game's way. I really liked the DLC for Last of Us, and I liked Last of Us, but I had a lot of the same thoughts you did, where I just thought it was very repetitive. I thought I was headshotting everybody. Like, there was just that, I forget what weapon it was, but there was just one weapon I used primarily. I didn't feel any struggle for resources or anything like I do in this game. And the zombies were stupid. They very easy to get around, very easy to kill. The only difference was Ellie didn't have a knife.
Yeah.
Which, is nice that she has a knife.
So I guess it's the interesting, which is I was looking at that list of game of the years, and 2014 was the first time that we had the actual game awards, which at this point, after 6 years, has become the that's like what is regarded as the game of the year. Because when you go back to 2013, there's like Polygon's game of the year and BAFTA,
oh
and
yeah, so
everyone chose
it's
different ones, and it's kind of crazy. But that, I mean, again, it is definitely one of the better games of 2013
oh, you're right. So it is like all these different ones. Yeah, okay.
because
So which one are we going for? We're going for is
because I
it what's
believe, yeah, there's no way. I would say if we had to look at 2013, there's only one game of the year, and that's Grand Theft Auto 5.
yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like, holy shit! Like, it's getting another release in
Yeah.
2021. Like, there's just no. But again, I'm sure. I mean, it definitely won Game of the Year in different categories, and there are always those subcategories. But I know that the Game Awards have finally had like a singular source for this is the Game of the Year. So
The other thing that
it's
might
gonna
pull
be up
this
there.
which might pull us forward is the online component. And I don't know when they're going to get that out, but if they got that out this year, um, they there's just they could make it very interesting. It could be very interesting. I mean, because like as I'm playing through this game, I'm imagining playing against human players, and like especially if there were you were going through houses and there's zombies in one, and you can lure them to take lure the zombies with sounds to attack other human players. That would just be
Yeah,
It'd
I
just be
mean, I remember
amazing.
the first one had multiplayer, but it was very much just third person shooter multiplayer. But it was very great because it had crafting in the match. So like they did a
Yeah.
lot of great things, and people loved it a lot. And then I remember them talking about when they decided that both the single player experience and the multiplayer experience were just too ambitious to be wrapped in one, which is part of me is not. I mean, I think they'll do a better job. But the last time a studio said that was Bethesda when they said that Fallout 4 was gonna have Fallout 76 as an online component, and that was a shit show. But and they
Yeah.
said the exact same thing was they're too ambitious. We need to split them. But I think Naughty Dog will nail it, and I'm wondering if that is what they haven't really talked about that much, and I think that would honestly be a huge win for Sony if that was maybe a launch feature for I don't know if The Last of Us 2 single player
It
invented
is.
multiplayer
Oh,
or
sorry.
if they're just now starting it. Like I don't know if they've been doing it at the same time with just less people and
I,
now
I
it's all
just don't
transferring over,
see
but
what's so hard. I mean, like I don't see what the problem is. I mean, there's so many environments in that game. You literally just pull out any of the ones where you're, you know, fighting the humans or fighting, like where they have a lot of cover, and you just plop that down. You let people go about their way. It's like
yeah,
you can almost leave them as is with the zombies inside some houses and not in others, and like just leave it like that, and just let us go,
yeah,
with the same.
I think they've got something that's just I mean if they're thinking that's too ambitious to do at the same time, which I don't doubt. Multiplayer is hard to do and stuff. There's a lot of balancing
Yeah.
that goes involved, but maybe they don't want what The Last of Us one was, which was just a third person shooter online. Maybe they have battle royale in mind. Maybe they have some
I
different
don't want.
spin on battle royale. I don't know. So maybe there's something really big there, and I'm sure there is. I'm just wondering, is the whole studio working on that? Because they haven't really talked about it at all recently. And
Yeah, I mean, it was just slightly mentioned that it will be coming. That they're going. It was hard for me to even find a lot of stuff on it. I was like, oh, where's the multiplayer?
yeah, like I really would not be surprised if it didn't make it. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they just decided, man, this isn't what we want to be doing. We want to move on, which is fine. I mean, I think it'd be cool, and
Well,
I
they
think that the PlayStation 5 could use a great multiplayer game at launch if they're gonna try to compete with Halo. But
well, it's also the fact that they said they're not going to do any storyline DLC, so that they're going to do multiplayer. So I mean, I want one or the other. I mean, it's not that you really need a story. I mean, there was only the one DLC for the last game that I know of.
which
That
was fantastic.
yeah, it was really good. I mean, it really made it was like the pinnacle of storytelling at the time. inside this type of genre, because it just, you really felt for the characters more than I had ever felt in any other game, to that point.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you to beat it and see how your thoughts are. But for me, when I looked at Last of Us 1, it definitely was a complete package and they could have left it there. And I know that's one huge complaint about Last of Us 2 is a lot of people think it just wasn't necessary. And even, I mean, in my opinion, most game sequels are kind of unnecessary, especially like the second one. Like, you don't have to make it, and you never do. Um, but I'm glad that they didn't. I think they made it important enough of a story to where I'm like, yeah, that feels great. I just hope this is the Last of Us. Like, I want them to go move on to something else because they've been making third person narrative shooters for over a decade now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what do you want them to make?
I see. I don't know because like Naughty Dog they haven't failed in a long time. They came out, they made Crash Bandicoot, they left that, they made Jack, they left that and made Uncharted, they kind of left that but also did it at the same time. They made The Last of Us and then they went back to Uncharted, and I think Uncharted 4 was just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it
And I
was, it
think
was
that is
really
my
good. Yeah,
favorite Naughty Dog game. And then they went Last of Us 2, so it's like they just haven't had a screw up in a long time, and that's probably even scarier as a studio to realize that
I
you've gone
definitely
20
see them.
years.
I definitely see them doing another IP, but I don't see them getting away from adventure narrative.
No,
They do it so well, and they're literally the only ones out there that are really doing it so well. And it's just like,
I mean, others have been really making strides.
yes,
God
but
of War was
nowhere.
fantastic on narrative.
Yeah, but not nowhere near like the Uncharted. No,
Yeah,
these are the top of the adventure narrative realm.
yeah, I agree.
So, and I think we need somebody to keep pushing that. Well, I mean, until I don't know what the next Fable will be like, but that's close as well,
Yeah, I mean,
too.
there's a lot of people who are wanting Fable to be that. I mean, they want it to be the game that competes, I guess, with Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah,
And I mean, Xbox has talked about like when they were starting to acquire a lot of the studios, they were asked like, "Are you finding studios to fill voids? Like, oh, we need a studio to make narrative game and a big RPG game." And they said that that wasn't really what they were doing, which I definitely see that with the studios that they got. So, and that's kind of what's exciting about Xbox, and that's why I really want to see this July event is they didn't just go and try to match Sony's game. They understand that they can do something different. So they got studios like Double Fine, and they have they have studios that are just gonna make some weird, fun stuff, and I'm really excited to see what they do.
yeah,
Maybe the new
yeah.
Perfect Dark will be narrative heavily driven, but I doubt it.
We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and speaking of next gen games, it did come out this week that, of course, this publisher would do this, but EA said, or was it EA? Actually, this might have been 2K. Anyway, the new basketball game, which I believe is 2K, will be $60 for current gen and $70 for the next gen version.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's an
Are you
interesting
surprised?
argument. Am I surprised that 2K would be the first ones to do this with a sports game? Absolutely not. And I'm also really not surprised that games would start to become 70. But it's also, I feel, it needs to come at a different scale of like
Or
games have
different
been sixty
time?
dollars, not a different time, but like games have been $60 for a very long time. Inflation just does not affect the game's price, and it hasn't, and that's for better or for worse. Games cost a lot of money to make. Granted, there are plenty of CEOs that are making billions when developers are barely making enough to live. So there's
Yeah.
always that giant economic problem. But minus that, games have been shoving microtransaction in for years to make up the costs of game development and keeping the game at 60. So in my opinion, if games go to 70, that's not the end of the world, but we should go back to not having these games as a service microtransactions that just start filling our games with monetization, which be in previous games were not monetized.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, if you really, and this is how I always look at it, is like what you spend your money on a day-to-day basis, and like, what's a meal? A meal now is like what, $30, or I mean, like for eat. Well, sorry, so like $20 for a meal. Let's
Yeah.
say we go out, we it's $20.
Yeah.
I mean, is that really, and like how much, and that only gives you how much time of play. I mean, yeah, you need it to live. So I suppose there's that element to it, but
There is that.
there's some games that give you so much time, like especially some of these games are huge now. I mean, they're like breaching the 100 gig point. I mean, I know this is a lot of scale because of the asset size and like
Yeah.
how little compression people are using. Um, but still, I mean, it's like if you talk about over 100 hours of enjoyment with something, which some games give people, it's like $70, really. The
Yeah.
only problem that I have with it is maybe the time right now is not the best because we may be going in an economic downturn,
Yeah. And I mean,
depending on and yeah.
this is one publisher announcing this, and I mean, no one else has said this because a lot of other publishers have been on the boat of you buy it once, you get it on both gens. So 2K is definitely the first one to say, well, guess what? You have to buy 10 extra bucks just to get the next gen version, which will have what, like maybe 5 more frames of sweat on my basketball player. It just
Yeah,
that's
but I mean,
not the game to do this to. And yeah,
if
I
if
think the
they
timing
threw
is
out
poor.
games for like $100, you'd buy it.
I mean, and that's why I wanted to bring this up is like that's happened in the past. Like this is not games were not always $60. Like I'm pretty sure it was like Street Fighter at some point was like $70. And there were plenty of other games that not only just required like the super scope, so that cost more money, but there were games in the past, especially in the 90s, that just kind of cost a little bit more because of the Super FX chip or
What I
different
don't quite
reasons.
understand is like the agreement between different. I mean, I guess it's whatever platform you're going on. So it's like Microsoft is it has some say in what they want the regular pricing for games to be. Is that because like why obviously if you had some games could charge way more than other games, and if they wanted to, and people would pay it. I mean, like it really comes down to like because obviously a lot of games are doing the $30 price tag or because they're just not a full game, or I don't know. I mean, but there's games that I would definitely pay $100 for, hands down.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's
I'm
tough because like when you brought up the proposition of like if a game gives you 100 plus hours, of course that's worth 70, but and I think I mean Last of Us was is not necessarily the best example because it's like I think it took me 20 hours to beat and that was playing pretty quickly. But there's going to be games that come out that are super high budget and they're not really meant to give you a billion hours of gameplay, but just a solid ass 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if you played Detroit. I don't think you said you did.
no, I'm not a huge fan of those types of games, but I
Yeah,
respect them.
well, it was just. I mean, it was just just a very good looking game, but it
Yeah,
wasn't very long. I mean, you could play it in a night. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the case. Like, is it? Are we talking development time? Are we talking hours of gameplay? Are we talking? And it just.
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it does come down to the publisher, and I think that's why increasing the price of games is not the solution right now. Because yeah, if you can limit how much time you give to a game and how much you pay your developers, but I just think that the how much money it costs to make a big budget game and where that money goes is the solution and not necessarily upping the price. Because again, like we saw last year, Blizzard let 800 employees go, and then the CEO got a $30 million bonus.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how? Like that just doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
but
And that's
that's normal
America
business
in a
stuff. Yeah.
nutshell. But it just sucks that yeah, games cost more to make. You have to pay your developers more money to make these fantastic games. And there are some great publishers out there, and Sony, I will give them credit. They're one of the greatest publishers that I've seen because they don't drive developers away like Microsoft has in the past. They let them spend as many as it seems they spend as much time as the developers want and need on games, which I think is the case because God of War came out, not that buggy, fantastic game. Last of Us 2, Ghost is looking fantastic. So, again, it's not all publishers, but I
Yeah.
don't know if it. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think now is the time to up the games to $70 like at
Yeah.
all.
I mean, I guess the fact is I'm just surprised it hasn't happened already. That's all I'm saying. Like on my side is like I'm just surprised that because we live in a supply and demand community here. And
Oh,
I don't know,
absolutely.
man. I just feel like there's a really big demand for these, and the demand has only gone up. The amount of people that are playing games now is ridiculous. So I mean, it just doesn't follow the supply and demand. And I don't know what's capping it. Like I don't know what really is holding back games from just being ridiculous, prices. It just. So we'll
I think
see.
it's just an expectation of the consumer. I mean, like again, it's been like 20 straight years, more than 20, that we've had games at that constant 60 range, unless it's like a special edition. And but at the same time, it's kind of hard to look at a game and say, well, games cost a lot of money to make, so we need to up the price, and like there's the whole inflation, everything. When year by year, the video game industry is making more and more money. Like there's no decline in sales or gaining of money in the games industry, but
Well, so you talk about inflation, but you like legit inflation's a thing too. I mean, the value of a dollar is a lot
oh
less
no, yeah,
than.
that's what I mean. Like the actual
Yeah,
inflation of all other products in this world have
yeah,
everything costs more than they did 20 years ago, but games are just not even, they just don't go by the rules of inflation. I don't know why.
yeah. It's I mean, it'll be interesting when we go for onto like cloud services and see if that changes things because now because everybody what they want is, and this is what's I think why people were so disappointed with Stadia is they want a Netflix experience for games.
Yeah.
They want to pay a monthly fee and then just play any game on the service. I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if that'll ever exist, but that'll be a whole nother
I mean,
pricing model that we're going to have to
that's
figure
Game
out.
Pass and like that is Game Pass right now.
So
You
what do
pay
they do?
them.
Yeah, but how do they compensate the different companies? Because it really
It's
did hurt a lot of the people who make movies and stuff
oh,
because it's a
same with
lot harder to.
Spotify.
Yeah,
Like it killed so much of the music industry and how much you make. But I think what I don't think they've ever released the exact numbers for how much they compensate for Game Pass, but I think something that they're keeping, and I've noticed this because I mean, it seems like every month they're adding more and more games, but also they're removing games, and I think Netflix is kind of at the same point where once you reach this point where you're like, okay, we have this many subscribers and this much money to divvy up between all 100 plus game developers that are on here. I think they've reached their number and they wanted to be able to say 100 plus games on Game Pass. And then I think from now on, we're never going to see them say 200 plus. It's just going to be at any point in time, there's 100. And then that's kind of their tipping point. Like any more, and they
yeah,
can't give developers enough money to merit that price. And again, they also have the ability that every published first party game from them goes on Game Pass. So
that's true.
they have that incentive of if it's an exclusive, if it's an Xbox made game, it's going on Game Pass day one. So, which is fantastic. So maybe that's how Microsoft will avoid upping the price of their first party games because Game Pass is just, I think they have like 10 million subscribers now. Like it's just, it's an amazing service. I'll give them that. Like it is
I haven't done it
so.
yet, so that's why I
As
didn't.
someone who loves physical games and realizes that the days are numbered for that entire idea of having a physical copy of the game, Game Pass is just absolutely awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that it is going to be a battle for how they can grow it, because whoever can figure out this subscription model will make a lot of money, and will hold the sea for the next generation of games, and it's like, I don't know. And I don't know now, do we pay more for that? How much are we paying? How much do you pay for Netflix? Is it
Oh my
like,
god,
I
that has,
forgot.
yeah, that's gone up over the years. Like
Yeah.
almost yearly, it goes up. I think it's like up to $13, maybe 15
Yeah.
bucks.
It's $13 per month. That's what it says. For a
Um,
standard streaming plan, which I didn't even
yeah,
know that. Oh, they have high definition as premium.
yep,
So you
there
don't
you
get high
go.
definition, which is 15.99, which is really good. I mean, in comparison to some of the other things you pay for monthly, rent.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely cheaper
It
than rent. I'll give you that.
yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, and it gives people a lot of joy, and probably too much. But that's a totally different subject.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think the big thing with Game Pass and why it's been so successful, and we're seeing companies like, well, I think Rockstar is a great example of a big company who has the great games using Game Pass to the best of their abilities, which was they had Grand Theft Auto 5 on there for a while, and they were making money for Microsoft because their game was on there, I'm sure. But then they decided instead of putting on Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5, they asked them take off Grand Theft Auto 5 and put on Red Dead 2. So for them, I think their value proposition was we want one big Rockstar game on Game Pass, and that's going to be enough.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a whole nother market of the Game Pass, which is not just about the subscribers, but when you have Game Pass, you get discounts on buying and owning the game. So like, they have this system where you pay for the subscription, you get all access to your games, but then if there's a game that's leaving or you want to never lose, you get a discounted price. And then now the developer just got their game sold, and they're also making money on the Game Pass subscription while they're on there. So again, I don't know the amounts, but it seems incredibly friendly to developers, and we're seeing more and more indie companies do it. Which, honestly, if these small indie companies are joining something like that, it can't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it looks to be pretty much the same. I looked it all up. So Game Pass is $14.99 per month.
That's the Ultimate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't.
So yeah, they have the 3.
What is Ultimate? Ultimate subscription earlier this year.
Yeah. So Game Pass Ultimate is you get Game Pass for console, Game Pass for PC, and Xbox.
Oh, okay.
All in one. Which.
Yeah, Game Pass PC is $9.99, and then Game Pass console is $9.99, and then Xbox Live is $9.99.
Yep.
So yeah, $9.99.
All 3, you get 50% off what they would all 3 together, which is what I have. So.
Yeah. Okay. So most likely, most people are going to get Ultimate, and then PlayStation Now is $19.99 per month.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's interesting that they're charging more for a service that.
So it says today Sony announced that its video game subscription service would cost $9.99 per month in the U.S. so it went down from $19.99 per month.
And I guarantee you it's because of Game
Pass. Quarterly plan. Meanwhile, quarterly plans running. Okay, yeah. Well, it's interesting that you don't.
Competitive.
So is this your Xbox Gold account with the Game Pass? I mean, does that get filtered into?
If you have Ultimate, yeah, it comes with your Game Pass Gold. But if you buy just Game Pass console or just Game Pass PC, you have to get Gold separately. And I think that's going to change. I think if Xbox really wants to get aggressive with Game Pass, they've already proven it's a success, and it's getting millions and millions of people to subscribe. I think if they just start telling people there is no Gold, you just buy Game Pass, like, just stop having people pay for Xbox Live Gold and just have people get Game Pass, I think that would be huge. And I think more people would definitely start doing it. Because I think for some people, they're like, well, Game Pass is cool, but I don't have a PC, I don't have a PC, so I don't want to pay for Game Pass PC. And I don't want to pay for something on top of my Gold price, which is a valid concern. But especially when a lot of the Xbox Game Pass games are online.
It's curious to know, like, because there's 800. I just looked up. There's 800 games on PlayStation Now, and so it's fairly. And you said that how many games on Game Pass? 100.
Yeah, over 100. It's usually
over 100.
Somewhere between 100 and 150. It's kind of varying, but I mean.
And they're new game. I mean, like, there's it's pretty much everything that I can see. You have Tomb Raider, a lot of. Well, granted, like controls on here, and
has a ton of that's the only way to play PS2 and PS3 games and PS1 games.
It is.
Yeah. So they have that entire, which I think Xbox Game Pass does have Xbox 360 games part of their deal on console that are backwards compatible, but again, that's not their only, like, PlayStation can't put the disc in, but I can put my disc into the Xbox, which makes sense why they would have so many more games, but I'm wondering how they manage to get.
That's what exactly right. How are they paying these people, and like, how are they paying these developers, and like, is it per click, and like?
Well, I mean, maybe that's why we don't see some of the bigger names go.
But you do.
PlayStation Now, like, I mean.
Let me see. What are the?
I'm trying to. Sony?
It's not from Sony. Let me see. I'm trying to find a game list. PlayStation Now list, game list.
And I guess my other thing is how many of the games came out within the last, like.
I just know when I see it, there are newer games, but yeah, you're right. I mean, they're not like the new game, so it is a little bit dated.
Yeah, which it makes sense.
They're not releasing on it. which I think that they're going to try to get to, and maybe that's the way that they're dealing with the problem as well. Um, but each one of these developers still needs to make money off of this because this is no one's going to buy a game anymore. I mean, maybe they would because you can still buy these games. I mean, you could definitely play the original Last of Us, and I played Wolfenstein, and
Oh,
I
I
don't know.
guess the other thing is like how many of those 800 games are streamed and how many of them are I can download and play.
I think you can download and play all of them, but I don't quote me for that because I'm just taking that by the fact that each time I play, it has the option to download and play it,
Oh, here we go.
especially for the bigger games.
So
You
this
have
is from PlayStation Now's website. Stream over 800 PS4, PS3, and PS2 games. Play as much as you like, save your progression, yada yada yada, or pick from over 300 PS4 games to download to your PS4 console. So from what I'm seeing, that
okay,
means is only PS4 games are downloadable and playable, which makes sense because the hardware would have to
yeah,
actually emulate the old games. And then anything that is not a PS4 game, you can only stream, which requires the internet connection.
which is still good. I mean,
Yeah,
and
it's not
I
bad.
think most people the only downfall you get from streaming is the fact that it shuts down your game. So like if you have to go do something,
Yeah.
otherwise it's amazing. I really the connection is really good. I mean, depending where you are and what your
Yeah.
internet service is, but I have really enjoyed it. Uh, and that's why it's like, oh yeah, Xbox is doing it now, and it's like I already it's already been around because I don't know when PlayStation Now came out, but it's been out for longer,
Oh
definitely.
yeah, they have.
Uh, and it's definitely growing at a faster rate. Like they've been adding a lot more games, a lot more relevant games, where before it was. But that's the other thing. I just don't know why they don't just dump the entire backlog if they're going to do this. But maybe there's certain people don't want to be on it, and how much they're able to afford. And also, PlayStation's not making doesn't have as much money. So, or Sony, sorry, Sony doesn't have as much money as Microsoft.
Yeah, and I mean I think that's going to become very apparent in the next couple months when these new consoles get their prices announced and what we're seeing. But and also, I guess that's another thing that came out this week. Speaking of Microsoft's money, um, there's
It's a
been
money fight.
rumors that WB Entertainment, Warner Brothers Games division, is going to be sold by the parent company that I can't remember the parent company of, and Microsoft is rumored to be considering buying them, which would be interesting. They'd get a lot of great developers. I don't know if they would gain the rights to like the Batman Arkham trilogy and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
But that's a huge acquisition, and I know that Xbox is still looking to buy more studios. So
that would be interesting. Yeah, that would be, and that's kind of what it is. I mean, with Disney trying to make their little kingdom again. Yeah, I mean, it really is coming down to just owning these large franchise. I mean, and Warner Brothers would help them quite a bit. But
oh, it'd also
yeah,
include Mortal Kombat and the Lego game. Wow, yeah, they have a lot under the WB Games label.
let me look this up.
Again, I think it is more rumor than anything. I think that's a huge expansion. I don't know if honestly I don't know if Microsoft has the ability. They have the money, I guarantee it, but I don't know if they're going to be able to handle that correctly. Um,
Well, again, they don't. Once you buy it, you don't have to. I mean, you're just literally buying the IPs, so that you can make games later and do whatever you want with it.
True.
Um,
Yeah, I guess it's
and
just Microsoft hasn't had the best of history when it comes to buying a studios for the IPs and just kind of either A, letting them die or just ruining them almost. So, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. Recently, it seems like they've
Yeah,
been a
recently,
lot.
under Phil
Yeah,
Spencer, that hasn't been the case. So we're going to see. Because, I mean, the fact that Rare, when they were bought, went from one of the best developers ever to a Connect team. Um, and just kind of
yeah.
lost their way. And now I mean,
Is
Sea
that
of
that's your
Thieves
sour? Yeah.
was just absolutely amazing of a game. So I have full faith in Rare again. So we'll see.
I mean, and maybe that's. I don't know. I mean, the stupid Connect is a problem in itself. But yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, it
They
was
should have seen the talent that they had. But
well,
there's a
the
lot going on
interesting
with Rare as well.
yeah, because the interesting part was for the longest time, everyone blamed Microsoft for kind of shoving Rare into the Kinect realm and saying this is all you get to make. But it came out later. I don't know if it was from the guys who went to Playtonic, who left Rare and made Playtonic to make Yooka-Laylee, or who, but it came out that Microsoft was not pushing them as much as we thought they were, and a lot of the leadership at the time at Rare wanted to make it the Kinect game, and they also were one of the reasons they shipped with the Kinect was that Rare said we're going to support this thing, so if you ship it with the console, we're going to make games.
Yeah.
And I think that when the Kinect happened, the Xbox One happened, and Phil Spencer took over, that was around the time that they got new leadership at Rare, and then they went on to make Sea of Thieves. So
Well, Rare had a lot of. I mean, we've both seen that documentary. Rare had a lot of problems with the way that they treated their workers, and like, there was a lot
yeah,
going on with that company that I'm sure, like, just to rest a little bit and be like, let's just make Connect games is probably not a bad choice for
yeah, and I
them,
mean, like
so
we
they
can
could get
all
their shit back
reminisce
together.
about the '90s and how great Rare was, but yeah, that documentary where they talk about the only reason Rare was the best developer in the '90s was because they were literally competing only with themselves. Like
Yeah,
didn't every team didn't hate, but like were just out to prove that the other one was better. So like which again, like
with the GM
competition is what breeds greatness. So
to a
there's
point.
there's a
I mean,
merit, yeah. There's something
yeah.
great there, but there's also something very
I mean,
wrong.
there's definitely was a little bit of overworking there, you
Oh yeah,
know.
and
So it's
again, it's tough when it goes back to the whole conversation of manual or voluntary versus mandatory crunch, and Naughty Dog is kind of the forefront of this. They overwork everyone there, but they do it because they want to. So there's developers in that team that definitely wanted to be working those hours in the '90s,
well,
but I'm sure
I
they
also
worked
think
also.
it's I don't know. I mean, that's hard to say because it's a lot about you're saying that based off of the leads, that are making that choice, and the CEOs of the
Yeah,
company that are saying this is the kind of company that we are. This is, and you might just been a person that really loved Rare, or, and like really enjoy. It's just like, yeah, and you're like, all right, so you get into it, you're like, I can do it,
yeah,
and you can't. I mean, it just not everybody is able to do that, and not everybody is you know can put in as many hours as some of these companies forced upon.
yeah, and I mean it's a fine line because yeah, like you said, the leadership of Naughty Dog and other companies can say we're a company who loves making games and we're gonna crunch, so like this is just the way it's gonna be. But then and then you can say like, well, if you don't want to do that, don't work for us. But again, there's gonna be points in time where you're like, well, this isn't exactly as bad as I thought it would be. So
Yeah.
and yesterday, Marty O'Donnell, the composer of the Halo franchise, he talked about the development and how awful Halo 2's development was, because they crunched like insane hours, and I know they talked about the audio lead he had a bed in the audio room and he slept there, and his family visited him for breakfast every morning, and it was just
Yeah.
and they said that they didn't they and he tried to clarify, he's like, as much as it might seem that way, it wasn't Microsoft pressuring us to work those hours, and it was just themselves really, really wanting to get that game to where they wanted it to be. So, I mean, again, deadlines are there, but
Well, it's also, I mean,
it's
it
tough.
really comes down to that they were holding on to the reins of one of the greatest franchises, and so it's like you're making,
Yeah, they didn't want to let the fans down, which is great. It's just,
well, and also that,
oof.
look at how much money they make.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know that's not the only reason why people do stuff, but it's definitely in there.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's the way that people used to think, and the idea. I mean, it crosses boundaries too. Like, I also think about. I watched a documentary on the South Park development, and they did the same thing for, they would put out an episode a week.
yeah,
And they would basically they went through their entire week and how it went, and then like it would always end up with them sleeping on couches, and that's so it was happening, and it just felt like it was like a very much of a '90s thing, like to an early 2000s was that's what it took to survive in this world that we live in, and so and does it? Yeah, I guess it does, but I mean, you could just add more time, and allow people to keep their sanity.
yeah. And I mean, I think it's such a problem in like with the South Park guys and in games. It's just like there's just so much passion there. Like people love making these games and they want to do these things that are just so great. And again, there's sometimes where you're just so involved, and sometimes you just like what you're doing and you just kind of get lost in it. And but other times you don't, and you don't want to be working those tough hours.
Well, I mean, I think you can. that whole thing of like if you really liked it, you would work the out. Would you would put in the time, but you can like something. I mean, fuck, you can
Well,
eat
no,
cake.
I don't think
You
it's
like,
if you like it, you should be working those hours. It's you're working those hours just because you don't want to stop working on those games. And there have been times where I'm making stuff and I'm just like, yeah, I've been working for 6 straight hours and I can take a break and should, but it's just like I'm enjoying my time. And I think there's some of that there, but there's definitely, again, there's voluntary crunch and there's mandatory.
yeah, where if you're gonna get fired if you don't do it, now we're talking a whole different story.
Yeah, that's where, we start talking about the whole EA Wives debacle from the mid 2000s.
Yeah, what I don't know.
There
I
was
don't know
like
how to go with that.
I think it was a subreddit or just like a group of people who were just like they were literally just wives of EA developers and just like significant others of people and they just like it was like a support group. They're like, "Yeah, I haven't seen my husband in 3 weeks because he's been at the office 24/7 for 3 weeks straight and he's never coming home." And it's like, "Holy fuck." And it's not like they don't want to be there. They're just forced through those deadlines and the second the game releases, they're fired. So, it's just man.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad we're getting a little bit away from that, and but I mean to come all the way back, it's like now that with the compensation, it's like now you definitely want to be able to make the money and like be able to rest because that if you take away the money or you don't give companies enough money, then they're going to be struggling, and it kind of that's kind of what created that culture in the first place was a lot of these because you're putting in so much time to develop these games that you have to value that you have to make your money
Yeah.
back because it's like it's one of the most risky industries that you can do. Like especially because you're literally saying that like for 2 years we're not making any money.
Yeah.
And until the game releases, and it's like that's when people make their money back, and that's just a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And so if they're not going to make their money back, it's just going to create more of that culture and more of that same goings. So I hope that we still compensate well. So that's why the $70, whatever. I'll literally give the game industry whatever the hell they want. It's been like a big part of my life. I'll give them anything they want. I don't want them to hear that because I know a lot of people won't agree with me, and a lot of people get really like debatey on this. Like, oh, it was stupid companies asking for more money. Those cheap bastards are like, oh, this game I paid full price and it wasn't a full game. And like, I get it. Like as consumers, we need to have demands and we need to expect excellence. But I also just, I don't like the bottom half of companies going under and like, it's just there's
Yeah,
the
no,
other side
it's
of it
it's
that's like,
yeah, there's always multiple sides to the problem and it just yeah, you can't it's hard because it's so easy to lump together and be like, yeah, I don't really give a shit or like all the companies are bad because I mean, again, it depends on the company. If Blizzard wants to spend or if they want to charge me 70 to 80 bucks for Diablo 4, I'm like, well, I don't know, buddy. You literally just gave your CEO millions. Like I think that makes up for the 10 bucks per game. But again, like with Naughty Dog or game like developers that are making fantastic games, I'm like, yeah. I mean, there's tons of studios that I'll support on Kickstarter, and I'm okay with just giving them money, even if it's just like a donation, because I just love what they do so much.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean, they've tried that pay what you want method. I was really interested in that because never really see the data behind that, like if it actually works. What I'm saying, the
yeah,
pay what you want model. Yeah, I'd love to see like how much those companies make or like. And I can't think of a game that was pay what you want, but I know there's been different products over the years, but I can't remember any of
yeah. I
them.
mean, you could say that at its core, that's what free to play were meant to be. It's like you can play the game for free, and then you get more.
Yeah,
But it definitely went away from that very quickly and rapidly.
because
Um,
that's like enticing microtransactions and like back
exactly.
end. It's like especially when it's now you have as bad as like pay to win type of games or like
Yep.
these games where you have to wait. They're impossible to beat because you have to wait. You would have to wait like 10 years uh, to do it or whatever. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but
Yeah.
these are
No.
reasonable numbers.
Yeah. I mean, free to play went to the wayside rapidly fast, but I think at its core, it was meant to be like play the game, and there's a little bit of a game here, but if you want more, like yeah, just give us some money. It's our this is kind of my job. I'm paying my bills making this game, please. So, but yeah, it went away from that and became predatory. So I don't know. That's why I like Kickstarter a lot, but it's also not. It's not a solution. Kickstarter doesn't always work.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'm
even
trying to find.
giving to a Kickstarter is a gamble as like as a gamer. Like you don't know, games don't just always happen. Sometimes a game is not going to be fun and shouldn't release. And if you're going to give Kickstarter money, you have to accept the fact that you might never see that game.
So I guess Humble Bundle is a pay what you want vendor. Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean you can like they have bundles and it's like, well, give us $10, here's 3 games. But if you give us 50, here's 40 games. So yeah, but
Okay.
and they also throw software
It's not
in there and
it's not quite
it
exactly, but
yeah, it's something. And
yeah,
I love Humble Bundle. I think they're great, and I've gotten a lot of games from them over the years.
yeah. Okay. It doesn't seem like I can find any actual games that did a pay what you want model. I don't think
Yeah,
it
I think
really.
Destiny has gone through a lot of changes, especially since they left Activision, and how they monetize their game. And right now, they're sitting at somewhat of a pay what you want because they have a yearly expansion, which is just like it's like a World of Warcraft expansion. You know, the base Destiny is free, but and that's like 1 year of content from the first year, and then you can pay for the one big expansion, which gives you like a whole new campaign and all sorts of stuff. And then they have seasons throughout the year, usually about 4 seasons a year,
Yeah.
and each of those is $10, and it's like it comes with a battle pass system and everything, but you don't have to buy it if you don't want or care for it. So like if you go 3 months without playing Destiny and you missed 2 seasons, you don't have to buy the past two to play the current season. Or
See, I don't
maybe
know
you.
if that's pay what you want because like I think the pay what you want is like I could pay $1 for this, or I could pay $100 for
Oh, I
this.
see what you're
You know,
saying.
so it's like it's a donational model built into the pay
Yeah.
because what you're talking about is still microtransactions in a way. I mean, it's or DLC or whatever you want to call it. It's some sort of content that you're paying a set hard price for to
Yeah, I
get.
know. I see what you're getting at.
But I don't think anybody's done it. I mean, I've seen it. I definitely come across this like for albums or like different like in different parts of life I've come across this pay what you want and I don't know if it works. I mean it seems
I
like
don't
such an
think it
interesting idea.
does. Like I just there's just
Like
too
are
many people out there who, if you don't have to spend more than a penny or a dollar, like they're just not going to. I mean, there's people like people who pirate stuff. They don't realize that you're stealing this thing that someone made for money. Like it, I just don't think it'll ever be a viable thing.
but isn't that like so it's just like that we're bastards as a human race,
Yeah, no, that's what it
a
is. We're
majority, and it
bastards.
it's like I would like, and and that's the thing, like most people love video games, but they're not willing to. And this goes directly back to the $70 and the same argument is it's like I don't think they get it. Like, and maybe it's the youth. Maybe it's like as you're younger, you don't really. Because I remember when I was younger, I was turning the hell out of shit. Sorry, don't do that.
We
Um,
listened, but it's
yeah,
okay.
don't do that out there. It's not
Don't pirate
good.
everybody.
Yeah, you'll get caught now. It used to be awesome, but anyways, um, yeah, and it didn't even fathom that I was like destroying the world that I loved, and maybe that's just a part of our society. Like as we grow up, we make more realizations, and so do these models work? And like, can we? And it's the same. It goes into crowdfunding. It goes into upping the price. It goes into the supply and demand. It goes into everything. It's like it's the consumer's perception of the industry,
Yeah.
and it's weird. It's weird that we don't pay a lot more and like we don't care about this a lot more and want a lot more for the industry. And I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Just I don't know. People are not as generous and yeah, I've always been someone who's an advocate for you vote with your wallet when it comes to these things. If you don't want
Yeah.
something to happen, just don't go buy it. And that's why, like, I'm not going to buy the next Madden and all the sports games. It's like, I don't want them to continue making that game. I want them to make a better game. I'm not going to go buy it. But that's just not how most people operate. Again, Call of Duty, it's going to make millions. It is a guaranteed $1 million maker game. It's just and if it
Yeah.
is, if everyone agreed that let's just buy what we want and support what we want and don't support what we don't want, it would be a problem. But that's a utopia, so we're never going to get there.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the reason why a lot of these games need to have these big umbrella companies that are protecting them,
Yeah.
so that they can survive. I mean, like, it literally is the only way. You're talking about Microsoft acquiring all these. I mean, this is why it's happening, is because it's not a friendly world out there for an
No.
indie game developer, or even a AAA developer that's might not be as large as a Microsoft or there's just too much risk in
No,
this type of development style.
I think that was a trend that we saw with when Microsoft started acquiring companies, was they weren't going for these companies that were, I mean, yeah, they weren't going after things like Warner Brothers or like acquiring the next Rare, which they did early on. They
Yeah.
went for Ninja Theory, which is a fantastic AAA studio that's been independent, but they just got the realization that they want to make things that are bigger than what they've made, and they can't do that in this world without someone like Microsoft. Same with Obsidian and In Exile. Like, a lot of these, and Double Fine I think is a great example. They loved their independence, and they were super advocate that they wanted to be the weird game developer with Tim Schafer, but
Yeah.
they just had a realization: we need more money, and we need to be able to be creative without asking ourselves, are we going to have a job in 6 months? So, and that's where certain publishers kind of sit. Not all, but some of them do that exact thing.
Well, it asks the question about early access too, because I have to say that the biggest problem with this just does come down to the development cycle, and the way that you only get funding after the game releases. Especially if you're independent and you don't have any investors, and you're putting up the money yourself, which is like probably the best scenario to look at, because it's just really scary. And so, like, even I think early access, everyone hates it, but I think it provides a little relief for these companies, because they get money early while they're still working on the game, and it's like, fuck. And like, same with just the getting it from Indiegogo or any crowdfunding site, but that has its problems too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe $70 will be the new thing. I don't know, but I think this is a somewhat depressing, but a great way to end.
Oh, we at the clock.
We are at an hour, just over an hour. It was a
All right,
quick
just
hour.
over an
Maybe
hour.
for us, I don't know.
All right.
For me,
Well, it came out. It was natural. We did it.
we did it.
So please put more money into game companies and put your money out there,
Yep.
because it's important. You like games.
Games are
All
great.
right. Well, I guess that calls it. I hope that we next week get a person in the chat, but we still have yet to have one. So one day we'll have somebody. We'll have a party for the first viewer. All right. Anyways, adios. Have a good day.